What is the single most important piece of information that every Christian must understand when entering Biology 101? Hey there, this is Mr. Paris, and I wanted to just take a minute to look at this debate between intelligent design and evolution. Our students are wrestling with the question over which one corresponds to reality. And I think in order to answer this question, you must understand the single most important thing that every Christian must understand. In this picture, we've got two pictures. Up the left corner, we've got the Grand Canyon. Bottom left, we've got Mount Rushmore. And I want to ask the question, which of these has been designed? Now, when we look at the Grand Canyon, we know that this was not designed by somebody. There's no person that set out to accomplish this. There was no group of people that set out. This was just a process that occurred over time. Yet, when you look at the bottom left corner, we see a picture of Mount Rushmore. And we know that there were a group of people who had a vision of what they wanted to accomplish, and they set out to accomplish this task. This was a design by someone. Now, this is pretty easy, these two pictures, but what if I gave you a picture like this? Is this a design or was this a random accident that occurred? Well, the reality is we don't really know for sure unless we were there to observe what occurred. If you and I walked into a room and we saw a canvas on the floor and we saw this picture, we couldn't really say with 100% certainty whether it was designed or whether it was random unless we were there to observe it. See, the reality is we may say there's a lot of strokes and brush patterns and we can see some tendencies and some consistencies, but that just might be random chance. And we can't really say that it was just a bucket of paint that was dipped over and this was the end result. We can't say that with 100% certainty unless we were there to observe it. And I think that's the problem that our students are running into when they enter freshman and college biology courses, is they're not recognizing the distinction between empirical and forensic science. And in order to address this question of intelligent design and evolution, our students must understand the distinction between empirical and forensic science. They will not understand the confusion that is occurring in class if they don't understand the distinction. When we talk about empirical science, we talk about something that studies the presence and regularities, observe and repeat, how it operates. This is basically a chemistry course. This is something that we can test over and over and again. We can develop a hypothesis and we can repeat the process. We can repeat the steps. When we're talking about forensic science, we're talking about something that studies the past. We're talking about singular events. What happened? What occurred here? Nobody was there to observe it, so we have to look at the data and we have to make interpretations. Well, when we get to the origin of life, the origin of the universe, should we use empirical or should we use forensic science? If our young people entering a freshman biology course don't know the distinction between these two, it's going to be easy for them to become confused because empirical data can be masked as forensic science, and yet it's not. And when we talk about the origin of life, the origin of the universe, we have to use forensic science. Let me show you why this is so important. See, when we confuse the two of empirical and forensic, we get really confused because we mix the two up. When we look at the human cell, we make statements like science shows, but the reality is that when we look at the cell, it doesn't tell us anything about how life originated. Yeah, we may see patterns and we may see consistencies, or we may see things that seem unnecessary and random, and yet that doesn't tell us how something occurred in the past. That's forensic. Looking at the present and looking at the cell today is empirical data. See, it might look something like this. If A joins with B and then links with C, then the cell will form. Thus, we know how the cell formed. But the problem with this is that's how it could have happened, but we don't know for sure because we weren't there to observe it. Let me give you a better example of this. Explaining how something happens doesn't explain how something happened. Let me say that one more time. Explaining how something happens doesn't explain how something happens. See, once again, we're confusing empirical and forensic science, and the single most important piece of information that Christians must understand when entering a freshman biology course is the distinction between empirical and forensic science. It's how something happens and how something happened. Explaining how something happens today cannot explain how something happened in the past. Let me give you an example of this. If Seth has a water balloon and he throws it at Jay, then Jay will become soaked. This is how Jay got soaked. Now, that's a theory of how it could have happened, but we don't know for sure because, once again, we weren't there to observe. There are a myriad of ways that Jay could have become soaked. He could have been outside in the rain. He could have fallen in a puddle. He could have fallen into a bathtub. There's lots of ways that he could have become soaked. A theory that J became soaked by a water balloon is merely a theory unless we were there to observe it. We talk about the origin of life, we talk about the origin of the universe. No one was there to observe it, so everything we do today is merely a theory of what could have happened. Explaining how something happens doesn't explain how something happens. So the next time you're in your biology course and you're looking at science and you're looking at the empirical data, be cautious of when someone explains, therefore, this is how we know life originated or the universe originated, because they're confusing empirical and intrinsic data. Hope this helps you the next time you're in a science class, helps you better understand the debate between intelligent design and evolution. Have a great day.